There's a spider. You can turn the spider off.
Ah, one more for the game. Come, sit. You have passed the 13 gates. And you come to my table to play the game of life and death. Your stake is wagered. I refuse none who come here. Yet, I say, turn back.
Hey guys, Next Day 2, welcome back to another tryout. Today's tryout is on Hand of Fate. So, I've been messing around with a lot of card games and deck builders over the last couple years, and so I figured I've had this game for quite a while. It was like a Games with Gold game years back, I think, at this point. And so I figured I would go back and actually play this one because it's sort of like, it is a card game deck builder thing as far as I understood it. And I was like, yeah, let's check that out and see how that is. And this game is interesting, and the way that it's set up, I wonder if Inscryption took inspiration from this, or as if there's something else, or if it's just like the commonality of being inspired by sort of tabletop games to an extent. Like, I'm not sure if there's anything that predates Hand of Fate that does the same thing or not, but it's sort of like the way that Inscryption is set up from what I've seen of it is pretty similar. Like, the narrative setup is pretty similar in terms of presentation to what you have in Hand of Fate, where you're sort of playing a game with another person in the context of the narrative. As for the game itself,
This is more of a tabletop RPG than a card game.
it makes me think of I think it's called a fighting fantasy game. I streamed it at one point. It's just like a book, but in real, like, there's actually just a book of it. But it's like a just tabletop game that you play by yourself. This sort of reminds me of that, or just basically any tabletop game where you've got this sort of dungeon master. In this case, it's a video game character, and you're sort of being spun the story through their setup and whatnot. But in this case, it's sort of randomized through the cards, and there's a deck building portion where you sort of choose the events and equipment that will be in the decks. And so that's the sort of stuff that you will come across. Though I believe the dealer also puts his own cards in based on what boss you're trying to fight up against in the end.
I will add my own cards to the deck.
But like, you get a certain amount of control over what's in the deck, and then the game has a certain amount of control that's in the deck. And I think that makes it an interesting like situation. I feel like the card game part is what's most well designed. I think you're coming across like different encounters, like you might come across in like a tabletop RPG. Your dungeon master might be like, you found a blah blah blah, and what do you want to do? And you do you're rolling the dice and like, whatever. But in this case, it's like cards instead of dice, and so it's sort of like, pick a card and which one, and hope that you didn't pick the one that's a huge failure or whatever.
Shoot. This one. No. I got the worst one.
And so it's just like, it's a little different, but it's I think more of a tabletop RPG at its heart than it is a card game. I think the card game part is just to give it some more longevity, I guess, as like a more of a roguelite type thing, because it does sort of have that to it as well. However, this game has its interesting wrinkle to the situation, which is that whenever you get into combat, rather than it being dice rolls or flipping cards or whatever, you are playing like a hack and slash type game. And I think this spot is where the game is sort of at its weakest.
This is very slow. This is not the best feeling hack and slash system that I've ever played.
It generally doesn't last that long, so you're not doing it a lot. You're mostly doing the part that the game is good at. But anytime you end up in combat, you're doing this hack and slash third-person action game thing. And I tried it on normal, and I was like, this is really sluggish and slow, and hard difficulty
This is slightly better.
was like, we'll speed it up. But then hard difficulty, it's just sort of hard to control overall, just because it's going full speed, but like there's no like proper target locking or anything, so you're just sort of not always gonna hit the thing you're aiming at. It just doesn't work the best.
This combat is like a hyper simplified, like Batman Arkham type system. I might even call it like simpler than, say, Assassin's Creed, like the earlier Assassin's Creed, where you can just like counter and win, sort of thing. You know, counter and kill an enemy. This is how simple this is.
But it's functional enough from what I've played to where like I can overlook it a little bit to have an interesting time with the rest of it. I think the most interesting part to me is how this game sort of has like side quests built in to the cards you get as rewards for certain things that happen across your different sessions of play. So like you might get a card that's like, you land on a card and it's shuffled into your deck and you land on it in your game, and it flips up and it has like a thing that you got to do. And so you do the thing and you get a token, and when that token, you open that token at the end of the game, at the end of your session, you get the next card that is the next part of the quest. And so in your next game, you can do the next part of the quest. And from what I remember from playing it, even if you like fail your session, you still like any tokens you've won through, you know, doing your completing your side quest parts or anything else you might do, you still get the rewards from those tokens. You just don't get to unlock the next boss and also the tokens associated with defeating said boss. But I think that makes like a system that where when you lose, you still have made progress. This, I think, imbues the loss, the winning and losing as to part of the cycle of playing, making it so death feels like part of your progress rather than like a definitive hindrance. I think that this game does a good job of that. All of this sort of comes together that it's sort of like...
This game is interesting, if a bit clunky.
And it makes me wonder if and how they improved upon this for the sequel that came out in 2017. Hand of Fate came out, I think, in 2015, and then the sequel came out in 2017, and...
It feels almost like the most basic version of this concept, and I wonder how the sequel is in comparison.
I was looking at reviews on Xbox, and it said that the game was a bit buggy, and those were like recent reviews, so I don't know how well the game has been upkept, and those are specifically reviews on Xbox, so I don't know if maybe other platforms have a better experience there. But like, it makes me maybe like, I kind of want to try maybe that one at some point, but I don't know. I'd have to buy it. So maybe I'll play more of Hand of Fate, and if I really am like, yeah, I'll buy the second one, which gets me to the verdict for this episode. I think I might play more of it. I think I'm going to play more of it because I am interested in how it's set up. It's not terribly hard so far. I'm assuming that it gets harder the further in, like the later boss you're going to try and beat. But like, I've beaten the first 3 at this point, and none of them were particularly difficult. The only loss was when I tried to play on hard, and again, that was because I just could not get the controls on the combat to sort of work for me the way that I felt it should. So that's that. As I was saying, as I was getting to, this game passed this tryout. I think I can recommend it, especially if you're sort of someone who happens to like the sort of roguelike deck builder subgenre that's popped up lately. Things like Loop Hero and Monster Train, those sorts of things. It's not as much of a roguelike, I don't think, as those games are. but it also definitely sort of falls into the subgenre because has the randomized map. You know, it has a lot of the little pieces of being a roguelike. So I think it falls in, though I think this is a little bit different than a lot of the other roguelikes that I've played. So yeah, that's the video. If you liked it, you can hit the like button. You go in the description, you find links to all sorts of places: Patreon, Bandcamp, Redbubble, Twitter, my Discord server. Links in the description. Dislike the video if you didn't like the video. Like it if you did. I think I said that already. Subscribe if you want to keep with this and other shows. I'm trying to work on some newer types of videos, some other stuff, so I can get some more types of content out, stuff that I've been working on for a long time. There was a video on Monday where I unboxed a thing that I could see right here in front of me, so go check that video out. Comment. Have you played Hand of Fate? Have you played any roguelike deck builders? Let me know. Leave a comment. Share the video. Do the things. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!
Inevitable, I suppose. So often those who beat plowshare to sword die by the grim instruments of their industry. Still, she fought well and bravely, which is all I expect from my pawns and players.